you have made shows, you know, primarily for school touring, but also for other small venues. You've performed in kindergartens, in libraries, etc. So you've performed in a lot of venues that are not actually theatre venues, and that puts a sort of strain on or limits on what you can achieve. And I have two questions for that. The one is, do you envy the big theatres and the main stages and the the theatrical magic and size that they can achieve? And the second question is, when you're looking for place for your company to, if you're reading, texts and looking for material, do you look for something that can be achieved in a small format? Is that important for you?
I'm obsessed about having a company which is like a band. So when people see our shows, they'll say, great show, it was so Theatre Grimsborken, yet something new. And you achieve that by constantly working, developing, taking risks, making mistakes, learning. And also, our style of acting or performing is very much influenced by the venues we perform in, and in many cases they work against us. The acoustic is terrible, the sun shines right through the window, or the ceiling is too low, or whatever. But all those obstacles, they sharpen our senses, and we need to really be so clear about what are we doing here and why are we still here if this room is so terrible, working against us. So it makes us really much more sharper in about what we are doing and how we are doing it. So why am I saying this? A couple of years ago we did a show commissioned by a bigger theatre, run by the state. And we got much more money, and it was really great. But we spent the money in two ways. We bought time and the right people. So instead of doing a show in 4 weeks, we had 6 weeks. And I made sure to have the right people as actors and directing and making the show. The script. So, I mean, what would be tempting would be to, have more gear, more technical equipment, more lighting, more sound, more everything, more scenography, more things to carry. And I know many fringe companies do that, it's a tendency. Whereas I think that with this show being commissioned by that theatre, I mean, they commissioned that show because it was Theatre Grimsborken and they liked the way we did things. So it was important to keep our style of acting. But we had more time and we had the right people.
I'm just thinking about the fact that just in the last month I've seen Vesleblokken that you perform, which is a show about a horse. And I've seen Warhorse in, which is by the National Theatre in London, which has now been on for many years in the West End, where they have these amazingly huge horse puppets, life size. And so it's just that comparison that both of these are stories about horses, with horses as kind of main characters, but done in such different ways. In your show, you are two guys on stage. You perform all of these different characters between you, including the horse. And it's done with a couple of crates, and some bells, and that's pretty much it. And it's really interesting to see. And to me, I really, Vesleblokken made me cry, and Warhorse didn't. Warhorse was impressive, and seeing that, and the puppetry that they achieve in that show is incredible. But of course you're amazed by their skill, but it's not as touching as being in, you know, a tiny kind of 70-seater room, and watching just two actors perform.
Well, thank you. I've seen many times a big theatre doing a children's show, and it's impressive, as you say, but it's not magic. And I think that every time they have met a challenge artistically, you know, they've solved that challenge by using more money. Like, we need a life-size crocodile, rather than we haven't got the money. How can we make that crocodile come alive somehow? Of course, I do envy those big theatres, you know. Not always, but, you know, I really enjoy my work, but sometimes you're in a shitty school, you know, where people hate you because, I mean, they didn't realize you were coming that day, and, you know, and they're not really interested. It does happen, not very often, but it does happen. And you're just still trying to do your work with love, but it just feels like you don't get love in return. But most days are great, and I think the magic happens in a small shitty room if the audience see what I am seeing, you know, like in my inner space, in my brain. If I see, like in Vesleblokken about the horse is never present on stage. We have some bells, but we do see him. He's very present there. We do see him. And if we, as the actors, see that horse, you will as well in your imagination. And very often that's much more magic than Warhorse, which I did love, by the way, but it's so technical, it's so physical, it's so, I mean, the horse is there, it challenges your imagination in a different way. But I mean, I'm not saying that our show is better. It's a different show, it's a different style of theatre, and in many ways based on what can we fit in a van. Okay, we can fit 3 actors in the front, and then we have, you know, a certain space which we can fit the scenography and all the lighting, you know, and we need to get that ready in 90 minutes, and we need to do 2 shows and then, you know, pull the rig down again in 30 minutes. I mean, it's a certain limitation to everything we do.
But that limitation, do you think that a writer who's you know, sitting down to write a play for young audiences, should they keep those limitations in mind, or should they kind of leave that to the company? Should they limit the number of characters? Should they limit the number of places that the you know, play takes place? Or yeah.
No, I think they should have all those things in mind. For example, if they're going to write a play with multiple characters for us, they need to know that we're going to be 3 or 4 actors maximum. So that means that every actor in this ensemble is going to play at least 3 or 4 characters. That's the way it's going to be. That's the style. So, and you need to know that you can't write that in this scene we need a big ship full size. It's not going to happen unless we can make it up here, you know. So, like in Warhorse, for example, I mean, how many actors were there? 40 at least.
An enormous amount of actors in that show. Yeah.
So, and it looks impressive. It's like, wow. But we couldn't do that, and also the show would be too expensive to sell. I mean, we wouldn't make a living.
But would you take the challenge if somebody came to you and said, okay, I've written a show, there are a few characters, but there's never more than 3 on stage at a time. They do travel, you know, 3 times around the planet and once to the moon, but, you know, I'm sure you can solve it. Is that a challenge that you would be up for, or would you?
Yeah, I'd love it.